Ghost Hand's last offer, the twin suns, rose again over Droskany. But this morning was different. The fear was gone. The smoke had cleared. And the ghost had won. The townspeople stood in quiet awe as they watched the old man push his cart through. The marketplace, it rolled slowly, each wheel creaking, not because the cart was broken, but because it had seen war and survived. Vexen was gone. Reyna's team had taken him off-world, bound in energy cuffs. He hadn't spoken a word since the battle. The fire in his eyes had turned to silence. Even rage needs something to stand. On and his had crumbled. The people of Droskany came out of their homes. They gathered around the old man, not to mock him, not to whisper, but to offer food, water, help. One alien child placed a scarf around his neck. Another brought him polished boots. An elder bowed. "You saved us," she said. "You gave us back our home." He smiled, but it was faint, not proud, just peaceful. "I didn't save you," he said. "You saved each other when you chose to stand at the center of town." He stopped by the old table. The ghost knife still lay there, untouched. He looked at it for a long time, then picked it up, turned it in his hand, and placed it back into the cart. That chapter was done a few hours later. Commander Reyna arrived in person. Her ship landed softly on the edge of the square. Her silver hair glinted in the light as she walked up to the old man. She didn't salute, didn't speak first. They just looked at each other, old friends who had outlived too many battles. "You could come back," she said finally. "Train the new ones. Lead again." The vendor shook his head slowly. "I've had my time," he said. "This place needs builders, not warriors." Reyna looked around at the people, the barricades. "The signs of hope, then you've already begun," she said. He pulled a small chip from his pocket. It glowed faintly blue. "This holds all the codes," he said, handing it to her. "Defense grid, beacon access, Earthstrike signatures." "It's yours." Reyna took it with care. "You're sure?" He nodded. "I've given them water, safety, and a reason to believe. They don't need a ghost anymore." That night, the town held a quiet celebration. No music, no fireworks, just stories, shared meals, and light. They told tales of the old vendor who wasn't just a vendor, of the man who hid a soldier's fire behind a soft smile. Later, when most had gone to sleep, the old man stood alone near the fountain. He looked up at the stars. He didn't smile, didn't cry. He just breathed. Like a man who had finally laid down his burdens in the early hours, before dawn touched the sky. He left. No one saw him go. No farewell, no speech, only the cart's faint trail in the sand. In the center of the square, the people found something. Knew his cloak was folded neatly on the stone table, and beside it, a wooden sign that read, "I gave you water before war, and peace after it. Now, the rest is yours to carry." No one ever saw him again, but stories grew in the trading outposts. People spoke of a wrinkled man who repaired broken machines without payment on distant farms. They told of a silent traveler who brought clean water during the dry years in the war zones beyond the core. Rumors told of a shadow who appeared just before destruction and left before thanks could be given. The galaxy never learned his real name. But they remembered his code, his honor, his silence. They remembered the man who had nothing but gave everything, and so, across stars and time, the legend of Ghost Hand lived on. Not in battles won, but in hope left behind. Because in the end, he wasn't just the deadliest warrior. He was the quiet promise that no one is truly forgotten, and that even the weakest voice, when backed by courage, can shake the universe. The auction of broken souls, the alien market, was hidden deep beneath the metal city. Neon lights flickered on the cracked walls, and the smell of oil and fear filled the air. Cages lined both sides of the tunnel, each one holding someone who had been stolen from their life, slaves, prisoners, and the broken. They were all here, waiting to be sold like objects. In one of the cages, she stood silently. Her skin was pale silver, marked with bruises and dirt. She didn't cry anymore. She had no tears left on her back. The number 309 had been painted in glowing red ink. That number was her new name, her new identity, beside her cage. Two small children huddled close together. They were her daughters, and the only reason she kept breathing. They weren't for sale. No one wanted half-starved alien kids. They were considered baggage by the sellers, trash to be thrown away later. Loud footsteps echoed through the hall. Buyers from many planets entered the auction room, tall insectoids, scaled warlords, fat merchants with glowing eyes. They walked past the cages, poking and staring, searching for something they could own. The auctioneer, a massive creature with four arms and a burning voice, stood in the center. He shouted. Tonight's collection includes warriors, dancers, servants, and more. One by one, the slaves were pulled out and presented like animals. Some cried, some screamed, some went silent like ghosts when her turn came. Two guards dragged her out of the cage. She didn't fight. She didn't beg. Her children cried behind her, calling out for their mother. The buyers looked at her body, at the number 309, and whispered to each other. "She's healthy," one said. "Good hips, strong legs," said another. "I'll give 4,000 credits." Someone offered 5. Another bidder shouted. Suddenly, the bidding stopped. A strange silence filled the room. All eyes turned toward the back of the auction hall. A human man stood there, dressed in worn clothes. His eyes didn't look cruel like the others. He didn't carry a weapon, just a small bag on his shoulder. The auctioneer laughed. "You lost, human. This is no place for you." But the man stepped forward slowly and spoke. "I'm not here to buy," he said calmly. "I'm here for her." The crowd burst into laughter. One of the buyers shouted, "You can't claim her without paying." Another hissed, "Is this some Earth joke?" But the man didn't flinch. He looked at the girl at number 309, and then at the children behind her. He said, "I see a mother, not a number." The auctioneer narrowed his eyes. "Why should I give her to you?" The man took a deep breath. "Because I won't treat her like a thing. I'll give her a life, her and the kids." He added, "They deserve to be safe." The room grew quiet again, this time without laughter. The buyers waited to see what would happen. The girl looked at the man, confused. She had seen many faces over the years, all cruel, all greedy. But this one? This one was different. There was no hunger in his eyes, no desire to own or use. There was only kindness. The auctioneer growled, "If I give her to you, you never come back. No trades, no revenge, no second chances. You take her and vanish." The human nodded. "Deal." The auctioneer spat on the floor and barked an order. The guards released the girl and brought the children. The man walked over, removed his coat, and gently wrapped it around her shoulders. She flinched at his touch, not because it hurt, but because it didn't. He looked at the kids and smiled. "Let's go." As they walked out, the crowd parted in silence. No one dared stop them. Maybe it was the way the human walked, with calm strength. Maybe it was something in his eyes. A fire no one wanted to test. The girl kept looking back, expecting someone to pull them away, but no one did. They reached the outer tunnels, where an old ship waited. The man opened the door, helped them inside, and started the engines. She sat in the corner, still clutching her daughters. He offered food, but she didn't take it. She had learned not to trust easy things, not to believe in kindness. But as the ship rose into the stars, and the auction house disappeared behind them, she whispered her first word in days. "Why?" The man looked at her gently and answered, "Because no one ever helped my mother either." And with that, they vanished into the night sky. Escape in the rusted skies, The old starship trembled as it climbed into the upper atmosphere. Rust flaked off the hull, and warning lights blinked red across the dusty dashboard. The engines were loud, groaning like ancient beasts waking from a long sleep, but they were flying, and that was all that mattered. The girl sat near the back of the cabin, holding her two daughters close. Their little bodies shivered, not from cold, but from everything they'd seen. The human man piloted the ship, quiet and focused, every now and then. He glanced back to make sure they were still there, still safe. She didn't speak. Not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't know how. Words had always meant commands, punishment, or pain. Now, there was silence, and she didn't know what to fill it with. Outside, stars began to shine through the windows. The ship pierced the darkness of space, a tiny speck running from a galaxy that didn't care. Back on the surface, alarms rang through the auction halls. He took her without payment. One merchant screamed. Human filth, spat another. Put a bounty on his head. Within hours, hunters were on the move. Cold-eyed trackers with plasma rifles and empty hearts. They didn't care who she was, only that she was stolen property, and the man. Just another disposable fool standing in the way of money. In the ship, the human opened a small locker and pulled out emergency food packs. He placed one near the girl without saying a word. She stared at it, then at him, but didn't move. "It's not poisoned," he said softly, without looking at her. "I've got kids too," he added, almost like it slipped out, that made her blink. She hadn't expected that. One of her daughters reached for the pack, sniffed it, and looked up at her. She gave the faintest nod, and the child opened it. It wasn't good food. It was dry and bland, but it filled their stomachs. That was a gift no one had offered in years. The ship entered a quiet lane in deep space. The man adjusted the controls, then leaned back with a sigh. "We'll need fuel and supplies," he murmured to himself. "Can't go to any major planet, not with bounty tags scanning everywhere." He turned toward her slowly. "I'm heading for a forgotten moon, forest planet, old mining colony. No authorities, you'll be safe there, I promise." She didn't reply. But something in her gaze had changed, no longer cold or scared, just curious. The silence between them was different now, not heavy, not sharp, just quiet. Hours passed, and the children fell asleep curled against their mother's side. The man walked to the back and offered her a blanket. She flinched when he came close, but he didn't force her. He simply set it down near her and stepped back. Then he whispered, "You're free now." She looked at him as if the words were in a language she didn't understand. Free. That word had never belonged to her. Not in the cages, not in the ships, not even in her dreams. She touched the number on her arm, still glowing faintly. She wanted to rub it off, scratch it out, burn it away, but instead she covered it with the blanket and closed her eyes. Suddenly, a beeping sound broke the calm. Red light flashed across the control panel. The man rushed forward, checked the screen, and his eyes narrowed. "A hunter drone," he whispered. "It's following our trail." He tapped quickly at the controls, pulling the ship into a deep dive toward the dark side of a small asteroid belt. The engines groaned louder, metal plates shaking loose. The children woke with a start, and the girl held them tight, her eyes wide with fear again. The man swore under his breath. "We need to vanish now," he said, "or they'll catch us before we reach the forest moon." The ship dove into the belt, flying between massive spinning rocks and shards of ice. Behind them, a glowing hunter drone followed silently. Scanning, calculating, hunting, she stood. Slowly, one hand on the wall to steady herself, the other resting gently on her daughters. She didn't know how to fly ships, didn't know much about space, but she stepped forward anyway. Toward the man, toward the cockpit. He glanced at her, surprised. "I want to help," she said quietly. Her voice was cracked but steady. "I don't want to be useless." For a second, he said nothing. Then, he handed her a small scanner. "Watch the side radar," he said. "Tell me if anything moves behind us." She nodded, gripping the device tightly. Behind them, the hunter drone moved faster, locking in its target. One wrong move and the ship would shatter against the rocks. But they moved together now, not as strangers, as survivors. Cliffhanger. Just as the ship neared the edge of the asteroid field, a second red dot appeared on the scanner. Her eyes widened. "There's another one," she whispered. The man's face hardened to hunter drones. One damaged ship and only seconds to decide. The forest planet called home the old ship roared through the clouds, smoke trailing behind like a wounded bird. Alarms screamed across the cabin. And metal groaned as the hull tore in places. Below them, a green moon waited, covered in thick forests, glowing rivers, and hidden ruins. They had no choice now, no other route, no second plan. "Hold on," the human shouted as he wrestled with the controls. The girl wrapped her arms around the children, covering them with her body. The second drone fired a bolt of energy that missed them by inches. But the impact pushed the ship off balance. They spiraled downward through clouds and wind, toward the treetops. Branches snapped against the hull as the ship tore through the canopy. Then a heavy crash, a metal scream, and silence. Dust and broken leaves floated through the air like snow. The girl opened her eyes. Slowly, they were alive, all of them. Bruised and shaken, but alive, the human groaned as he stood, his forehead bleeding slightly. He looked around, then down at them. "Everyone okay?" The kids nodded, holding their mother tightly. She gave a small nod too. Still in shock, outside the ship, birds screeched in the distance. The air smelled of moss, wet bark, and something ancient. They had landed in a clearing, surrounded by towering trees. It was quiet. Too quiet, the human grabbed a small toolkit and stepped outside. She followed him slowly, the children staying close. Around them, the forest stretched in all directions. Green and endless, strange plants moved slightly, as if breathing. "This place used to be a mining colony," he said, kneeling beside a fallen log. "Abandoned after the war. No satellites, no patrols, no one will look here." She didn't answer. But she was listening. She always listened. He began building a shelter using metal panels from the broken ship, stacking, cutting, shaping. She watched, then stepped forward and picked up a piece. He looked surprised, then smiled faintly. Together, they worked in silence. The kids played with sticks nearby, laughing for the first time in days. Later that night, they sat around a fire made from dry branches and old wires. The children slept. Beside them, wrapped in cloth from the ship's seats, she stared into the flames. Lost in thought, he offered her a cup of water. Warm from the fire, she took it with both hands. "Thank you," she whispered. The words strange on her tongue. He looked at her, calm and steady. "You don't have to thank me. No one should be treated like cargo." Her hands tightened. Around the cup, "Most people don't care," she said. "They look at us like parts, things to buy, to break." He didn't deny it. He simply said, "They're wrong." A breeze moved through the trees, making them whisper secrets. She looked at him carefully. "You risked your life," she said. "You crashed your ship, lost your credits, gave up everything. Why?" He stared into the fire, then said softly, "My mother was sold once, when I was a child. No one helped her. I swore. If I ever saw someone else in chains, I'd break them." She looked away, unsure of what to say. He didn't press her. He just stood and checked the sky again. Scanning for drones, the next day they began exploring the forest. They found a stream with clean water and strange glowing fruits that didn't make them sick. The kids chased tiny animals that looked like floating jellyfish. She smiled once, just once, when one of them fell into a bush. Giggling, He saw that smile, and it stayed with him all day. They found a half-buried building made of old stone and steel. Inside were empty shelves, broken lights, and dust, but it was shelter. Stronger than the one they built, they moved in, made beds from vines and scrap. It wasn't much, but it was something real. That night, she sat beside him on a rock outside the new home. She looked up at the stars, so many stars, somewhere out there. People were still being bought and sold. I don't remember my name, she said suddenly, only the number, 309. He shook his head. You deserve better than that. He looked at her and smiled. I'll call you Alira. She blinked. What does it mean? In an old Earth language, it means bright one, he said. Because no matter what they did, you didn't let the light inside you die. She looked down at her hands. For the first time in years, she felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, not pain, something warmer, softer. Hope, cliffhanger. Suddenly, the old building's scanner beeped faintly. A blinking dot appeared on the dusty monitor movement in the sky. She stood quickly, her eyes locked on the screen. Something was coming, and it wasn't the wind. Teaching her name again, rain fell softly across the leaves as dawn crept over. The forest, tiny droplets, danced on the roof of the old stone shelter. Inside, the girl now called Alira sat beside her daughters. Watching them sleep, their faces were calm for once, untouched by fear. But her eyes remained wide open, listening. Always listening. The human man was outside, fixing a solar panel he had salvaged from the ship. He worked quietly, always alert. He had seen the scanner too. Something had passed through orbit, fast and quiet, but not close enough to strike. Still, it meant danger. Danger always came eventually, when he came back inside. Saw her staring at the scanner screen. You saw it too, he said gently. She nodded. I don't want to run again, she whispered. Not with the kids, we won't. He said, we prepare, we protect, we stay. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded again. She was tired of running, even tired of being afraid that day. He showed her how to use old tech, how to power the scanner, how to read the radar signals. He handed her a tool and said, try. She hesitated, then took it. Her hands trembled at first, but she didn't drop it. Piece by piece, she learned. Later, he carved a piece of wood with a small blade. On one side, he wrote Alira. On the other, he etched a simple and open flame surrounded by stars. He handed it to her. It's yours, he said. A name should be held in your hands, not just in your mind. She stared at it, then closed her fingers around the token. It felt strange, but good. Like something lost had finally returned, the children began using the name to Alira. Come see this, Alira. I made this drawing, and every time they said it. Her heart felt a little less heavy. At night, she asked the human, did you always live this way? Hiding, moving, watching the stars. He shook his head. I used to be a mechanic, he said, on a station near the red dwarf line. Then I saw too much. They didn't like that. She didn't ask what he saw. She just said, you're not like the others. He laughed softly. Humans come in all kinds. He said, some break things, some fix them. I try to fix. That night, thunder rolled across the sky. Lightning flashed through the trees. One of the children woke up crying. Alira rushed to her, holding her close. I'm here, she whispered. It's just the sky shouting. The human watched from a distance. There was something in her. Voice, now strength, not just survival. She wasn't just a mother in pain anymore. She was becoming whole in the morning. She found an old data crystal hidden in the ruins. She brought it to him, and he carefully connected it to a reader. It flickered to life and showed a hologram, an ancient message in a lost dialect. She leaned in, her eyes wide, some of the words. She understood. It's my people's tongue, she whispered. She repeated some of the words aloud. her voice shaky. The man stared at her. "You're remembering," he said. "I think." "I was someone important," she said, "before they took me." "Before the number," he nodded. "It doesn't matter what they took," he said. "What matters is what you take back." She smiled slowly. For the first time, it wasn't just. A reaction Nate was real that day. They painted over the number on her arm with ash and berry juice. The children cheered as he carved Alira into the doorway of their new home. It was a ceremony with no crowd, no priest. But it meant more than any throne ever could. That evening, she sat beside the fire, holding the wooden token. She turned it in her hands again and again. It wasn't heavy. It felt like light. But just as she stood to go inside, the scanner beeped again. The screen showed movement closer than before. A signal pinged once, then vanished. Someone out there was watching. And this time, they were coming back. Cliffhanger. She looked at the human and said, "They know where we are." He nodded slowly. "Then we don't hide." He replied, "We prepare." The return of the buyer's night fell heavy on the forest. The stars above were covered by thick clouds, hiding the light inside the old shelter. The radar blinked silently. Each flash was like a whisper, warning them something was coming. Alira didn't sleep that night. She stood near the doorway, her eyes on the trees. Her daughters lay safe behind her, breathing slowly in sleep. But her heart beat like a drum, steady and loud. The human finished checking the power lines outside. He had rigged the trees with motion sensors. Wires wrapped around trunks, hidden under leaves. If anyone stepped into the clearing, he would. No, he stepped beside her and handed her a small device. It looked like a flashlight, but with a red trigger switch. "Push this," he said, "only if you're cornered." She nodded, gripping it tightly as the first light of morning crept in. The forest went quiet, too quiet. Even the birds had stopped singing. Then movement. A shadow passed between the trees. Silent and fast, another followed, and then a third. Not drones, not machines. These were beings, tall and armored, buyers. She recognized the symbols on their shoulders. She had seen them once, on the night they painted the number on her back. The merchant syndicate from the Black Ring markets. They had come to take her again, and this time they had come with guns. The human crouched low near the outer wall. Watching through a narrow crack, he counted 6 of them, moving in formation. Trained, fast, confident, he didn't wait. He pulled a small control pad from his belt and tapped twice. A loud pop echoed through the trees as 2 tripwires snapped. Branches fell, vines wrapped tight, and 2 buyers hit the ground, caught in traps. The others shouted and opened fire. Blue plasma. Bolts lit up the forest like lightning. He moved fast. Grabbing an old blaster from under the floorboards, "Stay with the kids," he shouted, running into the trees. Alira held her daughters close, heart pounding. But then her older daughter looked up at her and said softly, "Mom, don't let him fight alone." Something inside her shifted, something old and buried something. Strong, she kissed both their foreheads, whispered, "Hide and stay silent." Then she stood and ran. Through the trees, she moved like a ghost. She didn't have weapons, only speed and memory. She remembered how they moved, how they hunted, and she used that knowledge now. One of the buyers stepped past a hollow log. She kicked it, and it snapped. Open smoke burst from inside, blinding him. She grabbed his weapon and slammed it against a tree. He dropped to the ground, unconscious. The human fought nearby, dodging blasts and firing in short bursts. He saw her eyes, wide with surprise. "You came," he shouted. She gave him a quick nod. "Let's finish this, together." They moved as one. He laid traps. She lured them in. They weren't soldiers, but they were smarter. They used the land, the roots, the shadows, and slowly the invaders fell, one by one. But then The leader appeared, taller than the others, armor marked in gold and black. He carried a pulse blade, glowing red-hot. He stepped forward. Pushing through smoke and dust, he looked at Alira and sneered. "You're just a number," he said coldly. "Come quietly, or the children die." Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from rage. "I am not a number," she said softly. She held up the small red switch device the human gave her. He rushed at her, blade raised. She pressed the button. A sharp boom split the air and old mining charge hidden in the ground exploded. The blast threw the leader backward, slamming him into a tree. His armor cracked, and he lay still. Silence returned to the forest. Smoke drifted through the air like fog. Birds began to sing again, slowly and uncertainly. It was over. For now, the human limped toward her, bleeding from a cut across his arm. She walked beside him, and for a moment they just stood in the fading smoke, breathing, watching, surviving, together. They returned to the shelter. Her daughters ran into her arms, crying with relief. The human knelt beside them and smiled. "No one's going to take you again," he said. Alira looked at the shattered helmet of the leader lying in the dirt. She picked it up and tossed it into the fire. She didn't need trophies. She had something better: freedom. Cliffhanger. That night, as they sat near the fire, her younger daughter asked, "Will more bad people come?" Alira looked up at the stars and said, "They will try, but next time we'll be ready."